Is that take one?
So they know where this
Where's the
is.
take thing? That's it?
He hates when I do it twice.
Oh. You need another clap?
What's that? I don't know. I'm going to give it to him anyways.
Yeah.
Can we go now?
That was so horrible.
Lewis,
Sir.
thanks for having us down here today. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for coming out. We always like having people over.
You guys are now 6 months in?
3.
Damn, how come it feels like it's 6?
Well,
To me, imagine you, it's got to feel like a year.
Yeah, it feels like forever right now, honestly.
Are you 3 months in? Are you happy?
I think we're very happy. I think we're, sales and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's going to grow organically. We're barbecue, we're destination. We're not a burger, salad, protein, steak. We're not running the gamut on a menu to where
Right.
we're capturing people on a daily basis.
3 months in, usually you get to that, because you've been pretty much here every day, right, for the
Yes.
first 3 months. So
I remember my last day off, December 9th.
See, and that's usually about how it goes. First 3-4 months, you're just kind of locked in. I'm sure you're exhausted, but you look happy, which is why I was asking.
Well, it's funny when you mention that because I've had a couple people in my career that have known me for a long time, and they stop by and they say, "Lewis, I've never seen you so happy." And I think that's what, in my career and in my life, that's what Sweet Lou's has given me. It's not only just about the barbecue and the menu and the staff and the neighborhood, but for me personally, that's what it's given me is happiness in my career.
Would you say that was the main goal of why you sort of shifted in here?
I would say that was the forefront of why we did barbecue, because I knew that barbecue was something that was a passion and that I could be passionate about for the rest of my career.
How did you get into barbecue overall? I mean, you're from Cleveland, Ohio, right?
Yeah.
So you, like me, being from the Northeast, and you're on record for saying this, so go after him first. So barbecue was on a gas grill or maybe a charcoal grill. But
Charcoal? No, it was always a gas grill. Quick and easy, burgers and dogs. That was a barbecue, which I've now learned that's grilling out.
yeah, that's a cookout, right?
Yeah, that's a cookout, exactly. I got into barbecue in 05. I started working at the Greenbrier, and I worked with a buddy of mine, and he was a graduated apprentice. He lived right around the corner. So again, it was a small neighborhood, very small town up there, and he had a trailer, and he had probably a 1,000-gallon tank on there. He had hand sinks. He had a little lowboy cooler. He had 2 turkey fryers. I mean, he was.
So he had the full rig.
He had a rig, and all he did was competitions. He was just learning, just trying to get into it. Had a passion for it. So we would hang out, and back then that's when my kids were young, and that was Uncle Ken. And where are you going? Oh, down to Uncle Ken's. We're gonna cook a brisket, or we're gonna go spatchcock 100 chickens real quick for a catering he's doing or something.
So how did you get from Cleveland, Ohio, to the Greenbrier to here? Tell me a little bit about your growing up. Did you grow up in the restaurant industry?
No, I grew up in a small town outside of Cleveland and had a really close family knit. I mean, I could ride my bike 4 blocks one way to one grandparent's house, 4 blocks the other way to the other grandparent's house. My aunts and uncles all kind of lived around it at one point. I left there at 17 years old, 20 years ago now, to California. I moved out there with a girl.
Did you moved out because of the girl?
Yeah, I moved out because of the girl. I was 17 and in love, like every other 17-year-old, right? I was done with Cleveland. Cleveland was done with me. I got kicked out of high school in 10th grade, then started working. And I worked at a 24-hour Greek diner. But I was learning, so I did that for a summer. And then once I got kicked out, then I went to Pizza Hut and started making money. Then I went to an Italian place that was a 300-seat restaurant, all scratch made, and worked my way up from dish all the way up to saute, and really started getting that itch, having fun. building camaraderie with the guys, and that's where I found my home.
So you went from there to California. What part of California did you go to?
I was in LA County. I always say LA, but for those that know LA, it was Diamond Bar, so it was near Pomona.
Okay.
Concrete jungle for sure.
Yeah.
But it gave me a lot of experience. I mean, I was out there, I lived with my girlfriend and her dad, but I saw a lot, learned a lot. I got my GED while I was out there, and just trying to grow up, forcing it.
Yeah,
Forcing growing up.
And this is, you're what, 18 going on 19 at this point?
Yep. And then when I was 19, we moved out to Hawaii.
So what year is this?
99.
Okay.
Yep. And I needed a job. I needed to work, and so I got a job at Home Depot and drove a forklift.
Oh shit.
Yeah, man. So I spent the next year and a half out there on my own, but I always worked part-time in restaurants. So I worked at Home Depot, and then I worked part-time in an Italian place, because that was kind of my niche at the time. And then I went over to this Asian fusion place and learned how to make sushi. And when I say learn, I mean it took me a while. I used to make sushi burritos. I created that thing. I had to have, because my sushi rolls were coming out like this for the first 3 months I worked there. And then 9/11 hit, and I moved home 2 months later. And home at that point was Tennessee. My mom was living just outside of Knoxville.
What was it about 9/11 that made you move from Hawaii to Tennessee? Just
Family.
You felt the need to be close to.
Yeah, because who knew what was going to happen? Who knew what was going on? And then needed a job again. And the only thing I knew was cooking.
So you started working in private clubs,
Yeah.
and country clubs in your early 20s. So that was like,
It was October '01.
so that's really when you got into the industry.
That's when I started just soaking it all up like a sponge, everything I could, learning who, Thomas Keller was, and Marco Pierre White, and Escoffier, and all those types of things. And then I did read, that's when Kitchen Confidential came out, and all those types of things.
Tell me, what was it like, doing private club? Because that's something one area I've never done. I've worked almost every other aspect in this industry. Fast food and private clubs have never been it for me.
Private club, I would say if you have 1,000 members, every year you're reinventing yourself to 1,000 same faces. So what you did last year isn't good enough this year. Whether it's holidays, club events, golf tournaments, all your menus. I mean, your menus, they're only good for a month and a half, really. And then you start hearing the feedback. I want new variety. I want you're just constantly pushing.
So the idea of better isn't always necessarily better. It's at least different.
Different for them.
And obviously at the same level.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
and very trendy. If you have a dining room in a club, say in Charlotte, you have to be Haymaker, you got to be Good Food, you got to be Barringtons, you got to be the Asbury, you got to be Del Frisco's, you got to be Shake Shack, you got to be Salsaritas, you got to be right there.
All of that.
All in one. That's what they want.
Stressful?
A little bit. And it just starts to wear on you.
In what ways?
I mean, how many times can you write a menu that's appealing to 1,400 people every time? You got to really hit a home run. And you can do it. And, the events, you're doing events for 1,200 people. And not just once a year, and not just twice a year, but constantly, over and over and over. And again, it's all the same people.
Right.
So that same event that you did in April, you're going to do, those same people are going to be there in May, and you got to keep changing, and it's tough.
I can see where that would be a grind after a while. You just start to feel like you're running out of ideas.
To a degree.
So why barbecue?
Barbecue, if you listen to the kind of the story we've gotten into, barbecue again gives me the sense of community, sense of I fit in. I just picked one discipline instead of 25 a day. I picked one to focus on.
But doesn't it seem so? It got you're constantly you've got the grind with country clubs, right? Where you got to constantly change the menu, so you feel sort of boxed in by it, and then you pick one discipline, barbecue, and a small menu.
Oh yeah, very small.
So you really boxed yourself in.
I guess I did.
You would think. Right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Using that terminology, absolutely, I box myself.
But then you got the fire to deal with all the time.
You know, I think what we've tried to build here is the variable of obviously the smoker. You know, I cut the meat for lunch usually up until about 4:30, and then we have the variable of our staff, because we try and build a community here and a family here. So, I mean, it's like being the head of household. You know, even though it's a restaurant and I'm restaurant owner or whatever, of course I'm head of household.
Sure.
But even more than that, just on the private side, you know, dealing with the staff. I mean, that's a huge variable for us, because a lot of our staff is either high schoolers, most of them don't drive, a few of them live in the neighborhood and that type of stuff. So there's a lot of variables that go on with all that. And at Sweet Lou's, we try and manage and allow all that to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it's an element that smart operators are going to have to learn as we, you know, I mean, there's not a depth on the bench anymore to find people, right? And it's not just because we have low unemployment rates at this time. Those numbers will change, but the industry's changing. People that want to come into it are changing.
Yes.
There's, a restaurant boom going on. Of course, you know, all things, eventually things will change, but on top of it, the culture is going to have to. And it's funny that you say that, because I've noticed when you and I have been talking in the past, you take a view on your employees' personal lives and time outside of work with the same level of importance that you do on their time here at work. And I think that's an important thing to do. I try to do the same for my staff, and I think that's a benefit that isn't spoken about in the industry enough, because we've been always, you and I, especially when we were coming up, you know, you had to work, put all your time in, and your life outside of work suffers.
What it builds for us is, you know, people talk about teamwork and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we don't even use that terminology, because it's more or less help your brother or your sister, help your friend, you know what I mean? Help your family.
Right.
You know, just because if the trash is too heavy, go ask somebody else to help you with it and, you know, get it done together. Whatever it is, it's not teamwork, it's family. It's, this is our house, we have guests coming in, it's every day is Thanksgiving, you know? That kind of a situation, if that makes sense.
Usually when you see somebody, like we were across the street looking at, when you were showing me the property across the street, and there was a gentleman that was outside, and you say, hey, Mr. Lou, and just gave you that's the type of neighborhood acknowledgement, respect that you just don't see in a place that has been open 3 months.
Well, during construction, we would come out here on Fridays and we'd feed the crew, and it was nothing fancy. I mean, it was just exactly what I always wanted, right? It's just the back of a truck, pulling food off of a trailer. It's pork barbecue sandwiches, some red slaw, bags of chips, bottled water. Like, you know, no frills. That's what we are. And the neighborhood started coming by. You know, the residents of Belmont would come out and say, hey, can I get one? Or no, they'd say, what are you charging? I'd say, I'm not charging anything. This is free. This is just a sandwich from me. We're Sweet Lou's Barbecue. And that was back before anything was level. I mean, that was last August. You know, they're pulling the tanks out of the building.
When you say tanks, this was a gas station, right, at one time?
It was built as a gas station, but it was a service station for a long time. And then I think it's been vacant for 15, 20 years. So once we started doing that and doing it often, and then I was here every day, talking, hanging out,
making sure that they're working.
Making sure they're working, yeah. Which they're a great company, and actually they eat here a couple times a week. So
how can they not? It's barbecue.
Well, yeah. I mean, we did something right. You know, we built a good relationship. That's what, you know, my partner Laura and I. That's what we're about, is building relationships. And again, community and family. I mean, I can call on them, they can call on me. But that's where it all started, and I think that's why you see today, in our short 3 months, I have lots of friends in the community, and the community has a friend in me, and that's what we're trying to do.
That's why I love your story so much, because it reminds me like when I opened up Lulu. Like, you guys opened this place up on a small budget. You couldn't do this uptown. You couldn't do this in South End. You could barely even do it in Plaza Midwood now for the price per square foot.
Yeah.
And striking out and doing something in a neighborhood setting and doing it as much for the people that are living in the community as it is for you to be in business, for me, is something that I enjoy about people when they go into business for those reasons, because it's capitalism, right? But isn't it nice to be able to do capitalism and actually create some humanity along the way?
Well, and that's what we've done. I mean, honestly, we have our Sunday crowd, and it's the people from the churches and the Salvation Army. I mean, they come over here on Sundays, and they know us, and our staff knows them. We don't have name tags, but we're on first name basis with our customers. Coming from country clubs and resorts and some of those other things, everybody had to wear a name tag. Everybody had to be in full uniform every day. We don't have that. Hey, come on by. We'll see you next Sunday. You walk out the door and we know that you're going to be here next Sunday. That's our tagline. See you next week.
See you next week.
Yeah, because that's what we expect. That's what they expect. We're becoming part of their day, part of their week, whether it's just walking by and saying hi to us, or we're saying hi to them, or they're sitting at the bus stop and they get a glass of water on their way over, whatever it is. That's what we've become, and that's what, for me, on a personal level, is much more important than the bottom line. Because at the end of the day, the bottom line will come.
You came in here because it worked for you.
It's already a great neighborhood.
And it works for them.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why, I can do more for the community. We've done a bunch of stuff, and we got a bunch of stuff planned. I mean, there's so many kids in the neighborhood, and their bus stop, one of the bus stops is right here, so we get to see them get on the bus, and some days I get to see them get off the bus, You
can become like the fucking Mr. Hooper of Belmont Ave, dude.
Dude, I would love that.
I didn't even think about it. Like, you would be the perfect Mr. Hooper.
I would love that. Well, I want them all to work here, Some of their, one of my employees is in high school, and she has a younger sibling. So, maybe she'll work here too. That's what we're trying to create, generations of. Not only for the success of Sweet Lou's, but for the community. I think that there's more that we can do. We did some stuff for Thanksgiving. We fed about 100 people right 2 doors down. The guy there, he's done like this Thanksgiving to-go thing. He sets up tables, he's got Schaefer's, he's got tents and to-go boxes. But we want to do more. We're going to do like a back-to-school drive with them and have like a carnival outside, do some free haircuts for the kid. Just always wanting to be very community.
I think these I honestly think small things like that, like haircuts for kids in the neighborhood, seems like it's nothing. That makes a huge difference.
Man, I tell you what, there's nothing like, and we're actually going to work with the barber right down the road who is a great customer, eats here like 3-4 times a week, and now he cuts my hair, so just a natural fit. But it's just something about having a fresh haircut when you go back to school.
Yeah.
It makes you just feel that you walk off that bus that next day, and that's what we want to give the kids. There you go. Now you're climbing.
One of the things that is most appealing about barbecue has much to do about the fuel as it does about the food. Buying a hog from a good friend is awesome, and that's definitely part of it. But not necessarily the only part that makes great barbecue, especially from the technician's point of view. What's not boring about it from a chef's point of view is the nature of the fuel itself.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is a temperamental mistress day in and day out.
With it being live fire, no gas or electricity assist, we are checking the fire every 20 minutes. We can adjust the flues manually. It's a water cooker, so checking and maintaining the level of water.
So when you say a water cooker, for those out there that
Yep.
don't know what a water cooker means as opposed to a dry.
Right, so when you think of barbecue, and I've got one out back, you think of a Texas offset, right? Or you think of the burn barrel and moving the coals underneath and doing your thing and kind of moving the heat around. Well, the way ours is built and designed, it's the firebox is underneath. So there's a barrier, which is it holds about 60 gallons of water. And that runs the width and the length of the smoker so that there's no direct flames on your meat, and then you're not dripping your fat or flavor, if you will, onto a metal pan, and it's just flaming up on its own, right, creating fire. So it's developed by Myron Mixon. He's out of Georgia, competition cooker, and it's worked out real well for us. But it is something.
So the fire itself is actually separate from the cooking chamber, and it's blocked by that water barrier.
It's all one piece. So it's not offset. It's not just coals. It's straight fire.
And directly underneath the food,
Mm-hmm.
which if you didn't have that water barrier would basically just give you,
Then we're grilling again.
and you got full amount of charcoal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how was, but the smoke still is allowed to,
All the smoke comes up, it's vented around the sides. So all the smoke comes up. Hence why I always smell like smoke.
which I'm gonna say again, is not a bad smell to smell like.
Barbecue is not just pork. Barbecue is a cooking method. It's a discipline. So for us, and I always have fun with customers when they come up to the block and say, "Oh, let me just get a plate of barbecue." I'm like, "Do you want brisket? Do you want chicken? Do you want ribs?" They're like, "No, the chop." "Oh, okay. You want chopped pork?" And they'll look at our menu because it doesn't say barbecue plate.
Right.
It says chopped pork shoulder. So we're just trying to train the community as well about what barbecue is, which is why we don't do sauce.
Which is why you don't do sauce, but then you confided in me that you're in process of branding and bottling your
Well, yeah, you
sauces.
gotta have that.
You got to?
Sure.
For a revenue stream?
Mostly brand,
It's just, it's interesting because, I mean, in multiple interviews that I was reading on your, like, and you've stated to me when I came in and got my food, it's like, I'm not a sauce guy.
It's revenue to a degree, but it's brand, and it's also, you got shirts, you got hats. The sauces kind of go hand in hand with a barbecue joint. What do you want to take when you go away? What do you want to put on the internet so that you can sell, that kind of stuff. That's really what it's all about. But I'm just a smoked meat guy. And it's not that I'm looking for the smoke ring and the this and the different blends of wood. I just like the smoked meat. So I don't like to lather it up and taste sauce then meat. I want to taste meat. And if the meat's not good, I'll dip it in sauce. So hopefully a lot of people don't use sauce around
Right.
there. That's the idea. Like ribs. A lot of people sauce the ribs. I do a dry rub. If you look at our menu, it's almost a tour of barbecue, right? It's pork forward with North Carolina, just salt and pepper, dry rub Memphis style ribs and Alabama style chicken, and then brisket we all put in the category of Texas.
Yep.
And that's what
Anybody
it
who
is.
doesn't is doing it wrong.
I mean, that's where it all started.
Beef is king
Yeah.
when it comes to that. Well, Lewis, I think we've covered everything today.
Yeah, I think so. We accomplished a lot.
Yeah, well, we usually do one way or the other. Normally it's comatose after I get done here eating. Thanks for having us out today, brother.
Thanks for coming out.
Appreciate it.
Jinx.
We good?
He's waiting.
Yeah,
He thinks there's going to be some funny soundbite or something.
I'm waiting for you to be funny, Mark.
Good luck. So's everybody else.